Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The transport ship groaned as it cut through the thin Martian atmosphere, its hull vibrating under the strain of entry. Elias Varn sat strapped into his seat, staring out the narrow viewport as the red planet stretched endlessly beneath him. Mars. Dead, abandoned, picked clean. At least, that's what the contract said. Touchdown in 90 seconds, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Elias didn't respond. He kept watching the surface. Vast deserts of rust-colored dust, broken by the jagged remains of structures that once pierced the sky. Ancient cities. Human cities. Or so everyone believed. He adjusted the worn glove on his right hand, flexing his fingers. Salvage work wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, especially when you were willing to go where others wouldn't. And Mars? Mars was where people stopped asking questions. The ship landed with a heavy thud, kicking up a storm of fine red dust that swallowed everything in sight. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and Elias stepped out into the silence. No wind, no sound, just the faint hum of his suit's life support system. Atmosphere stable, his wrist display confirmed. Radiation within acceptable limits. Comforting, he muttered. Behind him, the rest of the crew began unloading equipment, their movements efficient and detached. They weren't here to explore. They were here to strip whatever was left and leave. Elias had a different habit. He wandered. The city loomed ahead like a graveyard of giants. Skyscrapers, if they could still be called that, lean at impossible angles, their surfaces eroded by centuries of dust storms. Windows were gone. Walls were cracked open like broken bones. The streets were buried beneath layers of fine, rust-red sand. Elias activated his scanner. A faint blue grid flickered across his vision, mapping structures, searching for anything worth salvaging. "Come on," he murmured. "There's got to be something here." A flicker. He stopped. The scanner pulsed again, weak but unmistakable. Energy. Not residual. Not dead. Active. Elias frowned. That's not possible. Mars had no functioning power sources. Not anymore. He adjusted the scanner's sensitivity. The signal sharpened. Faint, buried deep beneath the city, but steady, like a heartbeat. He didn't tell the crew. Not yet. Instead, he followed the signal alone. The deeper he went, the stranger the city felt. It wasn't just the silence, it was the stillness, as if time itself had slowed, stretched thin across the ruins. He passed through a collapsed archway, stepping into what might have once been a central plaza. The ground here was smoother, less buried. Strange. His scanner flickered again. Stronger now. Elias turned and froze. She was standing at the center of the plaza, still, silent, watching him. For a moment, his brain refused to process what he was seeing. A person. No suit. No gear. No visible protection. Impossible. He instinctively reached for the sidearm at his hip. "Don't," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Elias hesitated. She didn't move. Didn't even flinch. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered his hand. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Elias let out a short, uneasy laugh. "That's funny. I was about to say the same thing." She tilted her head slightly, as if examining him from a different angle, not physically, but deeper. "You're late," she said. "Late for what?" "For everything." Elias frowned. "Okay, that's cryptic. Who are you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him, toward the distant ruins, half buried in dust and time. "I've been here a long time," she said softly. "How long?" She turned her gaze back to him. 5,000 years. Elias stared at her. "Right." He tapped his scanner, pretending to check readings just to buy himself a second. No anomalies. No holographic distortion. No signs of deception. She was real. "That's not possible," he said finally. "No," she agreed. "It shouldn't be." That caught him off guard. "Then explain it." "I can't," she said. "Not in a way you would understand. Not yet." Elias crossed his arms. Convenient. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not quite irritation, but something close. "You came here for something," she said. "You felt it." He stiffened. "How do you know that?" Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, a faint glow beneath the surface, like light trying to break through. "Because it's calling you," she said. A chill ran through him. The scanner at his wrist pulsed again, stronger now. He glanced down. The signal had spiked, and it was coming from beneath them. Elias looked back up at her. "What is this place?" She stepped closer, not threatening, not cautious, certain. "My home," she said. Elias shook his head. No, this was a human colony. "Yes," she said. After what?" She held his gaze. "After we left it behind." The air felt heavier. Elias swallowed. "We." There was a pause. Then she said quietly, "My people." The words hung between them. Elias let out a slow breath. "All right, let's say I believe you. Hypothetically." She said nothing. "That signal," he continued, tapping a scanner, "it's coming from underground. You know what it is, don't you?" "Yes." "And—" She studied him for a long moment, long enough to make him uncomfortable. "You're not supposed to be here," she said again. "Yeah, you mentioned that. But you are," she continued, "which means—" She hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crept into her voice. It might finally be time. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Time for what?" She turned, looking toward a half-collapsed structure at the edge of the plaza. "For you to see," she said. He didn't move. "See what?" She glanced back at him. "The thing that's been waiting," she said. "Longer than I have." Elias looked down at his scanner. The signal pulsed again, stronger than ever. Then he looked back at her. "And you're just going to show me?" "Yes." "Why?" She held his gaze. "Because it didn't react until you arrived." A silence stretched between them. Elias exhaled slowly. "This is a bad idea," he muttered. She didn't disagree. But she didn't stop walking, either. After a moment, Elias cursed under his breath, and followed. The entrance wasn't marked. At least, not in any way Elias could recognize. To him, it looked like just another collapsed section of the city. Jagged metal beams, fractured stone, and centuries of dust packed into every crevice. But Lyra walked toward it without hesitation, as if she had taken this path 1,000 times before. "Wait," Elias said, catching up to her. "You're telling me there's something important under that?" "Yes. That looks like a cave-in." "It is," she replied calmly. "And a door." Elias frowned. Those two things usually don't go together. Lyra didn't respond. She simply raised her hand and placed it gently against a slab of dark, seamless material buried beneath the debris. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low hum vibrated through the ground. Elias stepped back instinctively as the debris began to shift, not violently, but deliberately. Dust lifted into the air in slow spirals, as if gravity had loosened its grip. The fractured beams slid aside, grinding softly against each other, revealing a smooth surface beneath. Not metal, not stone, something else. Elias stared. That wasn't there before. It was, Lyra said. You just couldn't see it. A faint line of light traced itself across the surface, outlining a doorway that hadn't existed seconds ago. The wall opened, not by sliding or splitting, but by dissolving into particles of pale light that drifted aside like mist. Elias let out a quiet whistle. "Okay, that's definitely not human tech." "No," Lyra said. "It isn't." The air inside was colder, not freezing, but still, preserved. Elias stepped cautiously through the threshold, his boots making the first sound that space had heard in millennia. His scanner flickered wildly, struggling to interpret the environment. "Systems are confused," he muttered. "That's new." Lyra moved ahead of him, her presence illuminating the corridor in subtle pulses of light. The walls were smooth and curved, seamless from floor to ceiling, with faint patterns etched into them, patterns that seemed to shift when Elias tried to focus on them. "Are those symbols?" he asked. "Yes." "What do they say?" She paused. "They're not meant to be read," she said. "They're meant to be remembered." "That's not helpful." "It will be," she replied quietly. Later, Elias shook his head. You keep saying things like that. And you keep following me. He couldn't argue with that. The deeper they went, the more the corridor changed. At first, it was dim, lit only by Lyra's faint glow. But gradually, the walls began to respond. Lines of soft light spread outward from where she walked, awakening systems long dormant. The floor beneath Elias' feet became smoother, cleaner, as if time itself was being undone. This place, he said slowly, it's waking up. Yes. Because of you? She glanced back at him. Partly. That didn't sit well with him. And the other part? She didn't answer. They reached a vast circular chamber. Or at least, what Elias thought was a chamber. The space was so perfectly shaped, so impossibly smooth, that it felt less like a constructed room, and more like the inside of something grown. At the center stood a raised platform, and on it, the pedestal. Elias stopped walking. That's it, isn't it? Lyra nodded. The air here felt different. Charged. Heavy with something he couldn't name. His scanner had gone completely silent. Its display frozen as if it had given up trying to understand. What am I looking at? He asked. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the object resting atop the pedestal. My pass, she said. Elias followed her gaze and saw the sword. It didn't look like any weapon he knew. The blade was long and narrow, but not metallic. It was translucent, almost glass-like, but far too perfect, too alive to be something so fragile. Within it, faint threads of light were frozen in place, like lightning captured in crystal. The hilt was darker, textured, almost organic, its surface resembling something grown rather than forged. It seemed to pulse faintly, in rhythm with something unseen. Elias approached cautiously. No energy signature, he said, frowning. No heat, no radiation, nothing. It's dormant, Lyra said. For 5,000 years? Yes. And it's just been sitting here? Waiting? Yes. Elias circled the pedestal slowly, his eyes never leaving the sword. For what? Lyra didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter than before. For someone who could wake it. Elias stopped. You're serious. She looked at him. I always am. He let out a breath. All right, let's say I believe that. Why hasn't it activated before? You've been here this whole time. A flicker of something crossed her face. Something almost like frustration. I've tried, she said, more times than I can count. And nothing. Elias gestured toward the sword. So what makes you think it'll work now? She held his gaze. Because it reacted when you arrived. A silence fell over the chamber. Elias looked back at the sword. For a moment, it seemed completely still, lifeless. Then, a faint pulse. So subtle he almost missed it. Did you see that? He asked. Yes. I didn't touch it. I know. Another pulse, slightly brighter. Elias took a step back. Okay, I'm starting to not like this. Lyra stepped closer to the pedestal. I've been waiting, she said softly, for so long. I thought it would never happen. Her hand hovered just above the hilt. But she didn't touch it. I couldn't wake it, she continued, because it wasn't meant for me. Elias crossed his arms. Then who was it meant for? She turned to him. You, he laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed awkwardly in the vast chamber. No, he said. No way. I just got here. And yet, she said, gesturing toward the sword, it's responding. Elias shook his head. That doesn't mean anything. Could be reacting to my suit, my biometrics, anything. It's not, she said. How do you know? Because I've tried everything you just said, she replied. And more. That shut him up. The sword pulsed again, brighter now. The light inside the blade shifted, slowly, like something beginning to wake from a long sleep. Elias stared at it. What is it, really? Lyra looked back at the weapon. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not just a weapon, she said. Then what? She hesitated, as if the word itself carried weight. It's a memory. Elias frowned. That doesn't make any sense. It will, she said again. He exhaled sharply. You keep saying that. And you're still here. Another pulse. This time, the light spread outward, faint lines tracing across the pedestal, then fading. Elias swallowed. What happens if I touch it? Lyra didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it. Hope. Then we find out, she said. The chamber fell silent again. The sword waited. And for the first time since arriving on Mars, Elias felt like he wasn't the one exploring the ruins. He was the one being found. Elias didn't move. The sword pulsed again, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing through the chamber. Each pulse seemed to resonate not just in the air, but inside him. This is a terrible idea, he said quietly. Lyra didn't argue. She stood just across from him, watching, not urging, not warning, waiting. You said it didn't react to you, Elias continued. Not once. Yes. And now it's doing whatever this is just because I walked into the room? Yes. That doesn't concern you? It does, she said, but not as much as it should concern you. Elias let out a dry laugh. Great. That's reassuring. The sword pulsed again. Brighter. Closer. Elias frowned. Is it getting nearer? Lyra's eyes tracked the blade. It is. The sword had lifted, barely an inch above the pedestal, but unmistakably no longer resting on it. The light within it flowed more freely now. The frozen veins began to move like slow currents. Elias took a step back. Nope, that's new. I didn't sign up for floating ancient alien weapons. It's responding to your hesitation, Lyra said. He blinked. What does that mean? It's waiting for you to choose. Choose what? To accept it, she said. Elias stared at her. I don't even know what it is. Another pulse. Stronger. The air in the chamber vibrated, a low hum building beneath the silence. Lyra stepped closer to him. You asked what it is. She said, it's not a weapon in the way you think. It doesn't exist to destroy. Then what does it do? It remembers, she said, and it passes that memory on. Elias glanced back at the sword. You keep calling it that. A memory? What does that even mean? It means, she said carefully, that everything my people were, everything they learned, everything they became, is stored within it. Elias felt his stomach tighten. You're saying that thing contains an entire civilization? Yes. And you want me to just pick it up? I need you to, she said. There it was. Not certainty. Not calm. Need. Elias looked at her, really looked this time. For all her composure, for all her quiet control, there was something fragile beneath it, something worn thin by time. You've been here alone, haven't you? He asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Elias exhaled slowly and turned back the sword. All right, he muttered. One bad decision at a time. He stepped forward. The closer he got, the stronger the sensation became, not heat, not pressure, but something like recognition. The sword rose higher, now hovering at chest level. The light inside it swirled, gathering, focusing. Elias raised his hand, hesitated. If this kills me, he said, not taking his eyes off the blade, I'm going to be very annoyed. It won't, Lyra said. You sound very sure. I'm not, she admitted. He huffed. Fantastic. And then he touched it. The world shattered. Light exploded outward, consuming the chamber in an instant. Elias gasped as the force hit him, not physically, but mentally, like a flood breaking through a dam. The sword ignited, not with flame, but with brilliance. Pure, blinding energy surged through the blade, spilling into the air in arcs of shifting symbols and impossible geometry. Elias stumbled back, but his hand wouldn't let go. I can't, he choked. The light surged into him. He was no longer in the chamber. He was everywhere. Stars burned across his vision. Thousands, millions, forming patterns he somehow understood. He saw worlds, lush, vibrant, alive with structures that defied gravity and logic. He saw them, Lyra's people, not human, not anything he could fully comprehend. They moved like light given form, their bodies shifting, adapting, glowing with the same energy now coursing to the sword. They built cities that sang, They shaped matter like it was thought made solid, and they carried blades like this one, not as weapons, as vessels. Elias felt their purpose, not in words, but in certainty. They were not conquerors. They were keepers, guardians of knowledge, preservers of existence. Then, darkness, a shift, the stars dimmed, the visions twisted. Something was wrong. He felt it before he saw it. A silence, a vast, suffocating absence. World went dark, one by one, not destroyed, erased, as if they had never existed at all. Elias tried to scream, but no sound came. The beings of light, Lyra's ancestors, fought not with weapons but with memory. They poured themselves into the blades, into the constructs they had created, trying to preserve what was being lost, to save something, anything. The last thing he saw was one of them, standing alone, placing a hand on a sword identical to the one he held now. And then everything vanished. Elias collapsed to his knees. The chamber snapped back into existence around him, but it wasn't the same. Light pulsed through every surface. Symbols drifted through the air like living things. The sword blazed in his hand, no longer dormant, no longer waiting. Alive. He gasped for breath. "They're gone," he whispered. Lyra was beside him instantly. "What did you see?" Elias looked up at her, his eyes wide, unfocused. "They didn't leave," he said. "They didn't abandon this place or any of the others." Her expression faltered. "They were erased," he continued. "Something is out there. Something that doesn't destroy. It just removes." The chamber dimmed slightly, as if reacting to his words. Lyra shook her head. "No, that's not possible. They were too advanced, too. They knew it was coming." Elias said, "That's why they built this. That's why they left these behind." He looked at the sword in his hand. "It's not just memory," he said. "It's a backup." Lyra stared at him. A backup of an entire civilization. Elias swallowed. "And now," he said slowly, "it thinks I'm supposed to carry it." The sword pulsed in response. Not violently, not chaotically, but with intent. Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. "Then it has chosen." Elias tightened his grip on the hilt, the light reflecting in his eyes. "I didn't choose anything," he said. "No," she replied. Her gaze softened. "But it chose you." The chamber fell silent once more, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. The light didn't fade. It settled. What had once been a violent storm of energy now moved with purpose, flowing along the walls in quiet streams, pulsing beneath the floor like veins awakening after a long sleep. The chamber no longer felt ancient. It felt active, alive. Elias stood slowly, the sword still in his hand. This time, it didn't resist him. It didn't overwhelm him. It fit, like it had always been there. "Okay," he said under his breath. "That's new." The weight of it was strange, not heavy, not light, but present. He could feel it in ways that had nothing to do with muscle or balance. It was in his thoughts now, quiet but undeniable, like a second awareness watching alongside him. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the blade. "It's stabilized," she whispered. Elias glanced at her. "That's what you call this?" "Yes," she said. "Before it was testing you. Now it accepted you." "Accepted me for what?" She hesitated. Then, carefully, "To carry them." Elias looked back at the sword, uneasy. "I didn't agree to that." "You need to," Lyra said. "It doesn't ask in a way you understand. That's not comforting." The blade pulsed once. Soft, almost reassuring. Elias narrowed his eyes at it. "Did it just react to that?" "Yes." "So it can hear me?" "In a way," she said. Elias exhaled slowly. "Great. A 5,000-year-old alien sword with opinions." For a moment, Lyra almost smiled. The symbols in the chamber began to shift again, but this time, Elias could see them, not just as shapes, as meaning. He didn't know how he understood them, but he did. Fragments of knowledge surfaced in his mind. Structures, systems, fragments of language, entire concept that had no equivalent in human thought. It wasn't overwhelming like before. It was guided. "It's teaching me," he said. Lyra's breath caught slightly. Already? Elias nodded slowly. I don't think it ever stopped. I just couldn't understand it before. He turned in place, watching the chamber respond to him now, not to Lyra. Lights followed his movement. Pathways revealed themselves. The space reshaped subtly, as if aligning to his presence. This whole place, he said, is connected to the sword. Yes, Lyra said. It always was. And now it's responding to me. Yes. Elias let out a quiet laugh, this one softer, almost disbelieving. I came here looking for scrap metal, he said, and instead I got this. You found something far more valuable, Lyra said, or far more dangerous, he replied. She didn't disagree. Elias grew quiet. The visions lingered in the back of his mind. The collapsing stars, the vanishing worlds, the silent absence that had consumed everything Lyra's people had built. He tightened his grip on the sword. That thing I saw, he said. Whatever erased them, it's still out there. Lyra's expression darkened slightly. You're certain? Yes. How can you know that? Elias hesitated. Then, because the sword isn't just storing the past, he said. It's watching for something. Lyra's eyes widened. Watching. For it, he said. For whatever did this. The chamber dimmed faintly, as if acknowledging the thought. A long silence followed. Then Lyra spoke, her voice quieter than before. My people believed knowledge could outlast anything, she said. That if something survived, if anything remained, then we would never truly be gone. Elias looked at her. They were right, he said. Her gaze flickered back to the sword. Are they? Elias raised the blade slightly. The light within it responded, not brighter, not louder, but steadier. They're here, he said. Not alive, but not gone either. Lyra stepped closer. For the first time, she reached out. Her fingers hovered near the blade, just barely touching the light, surrounding it. It didn't reject her, but it didn't respond the way it had to Elias. It never reacted like this before, she said softly. Elias watched her carefully. Does that bother you? She shook her head. No, she said. It means I was right to wait. He studied her for a moment. You said you've been here 5,000 years. Yes. Alone. Yes. Elias frowned. How are you even? I was made to remain, she said. Made. She nodded. I am not exactly what you think I am. He tilted his head. You look pretty real to me. I am real, she said, but I was created for a purpose. Let me guess, Elias said, to guard this place. Yes, and to wait for someone like me. Yes. Elias exhaled slowly. That's a long time to wait. I didn't experience it the way you would, she said, but I was aware. That's worse. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Elias looked back at the sword. So what happens now, he asked. Lyra followed his gaze. Now, she said, it leaves? Elias blinked. Leaves. This place was never meant to keep it forever, she said. It was a vault, a shelter, a place to wait. And now it's done waiting, Elias said. Yes. He looked around the chamber, the ancient walls, the shifting light, the remnants of a civilization that had refused to disappear completely. And you, he asked. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She turned slowly, looking at the chamber the way someone might look at a home they were about to leave for the last time. My purpose was to protect it, she said, to ensure it reached the one who could carry it forward. Elias felt a weight settle in his chest. And now that it has, she looked back at him. My purpose is complete. The words landed heavier than anything else she'd said. Elias stepped toward her. So, what, you just stay here? Alone again? She hesitated. For as long as I remain, she said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Elias shook his head. No, there's always another option. She studied him. You don't understand what I am, she said. Then explain it to me, he replied. I was not meant to leave this place. Yeah, Elias said, and I wasn't meant to pick up a 5,000-year-old alien supersword. But here we are. That stopped her. For a moment, something uncertain flickered in her expression. Something new. The chamber pulsed once more, softer this time. Elias glanced down at the sword. "You feel that?" he asked. "Yes." "It's reacting again." "To what?" Elias looked back at her. "I think," he said slowly, "it doesn't want you to stay here either." Lyra froze. "That's not possible." "Why not?" "Because it never responded to me before." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, before." The sword pulsed again. This time the light extended, just slightly, toward her. Not fully, not like it did with him, but enough. Lyra's breath caught. "I've never seen it do that," she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe it's not just about the past anymore." She looked at him. "Maybe," he continued, "it's about what comes next." Silence stretched between them. Not empty, not heavy, just open. Lyra turned toward the exit, the path leading back to the surface, to the dead city under the red sky. Then she looked back at Elias. "For 5,000 years," she said, "this place was all that remained of my people." Elias stepped beside her. "And now," she glanced at the sword in his hand. "Now," she said, "they're no longer alone." He nodded. "Neither are you," he added. That lingered. Then, slowly, uncertainly, Lyra smiled. Not the distant, quiet expression she'd worn before. Something real. Something human. "Then I will come with you," she said. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Good," he said, "because I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing." "That makes two of us," she replied. They walked out together. The chamber dimmed behind them, its purpose fulfilled. The entrance sealed itself once more, returning the ruins to their silent disguise. Above, the Martian sky burned red as ever. But something had changed. Elias stepped onto the surface, the sword resting at his side, no longer dormant, no longer waiting. Lyra stood beside him, looking out across the endless desert. "Where do we go?" she asked. Elias glanced at her, then at the horizon. "Anywhere," he said. The sword pulsed, steady, alive, and far beyond Mars, in the dark between stars. Something stirred.